It all started with a growing distance between us, an invisible wall that neither of us seemed willing to tear down. I felt like a ghost in our relationship, unseen and unheard, even when we were supposedly together. Every evening, he would sit across from me at the dinner table, his eyes glued to his phone or buried in work emails, as if I didn't exist. The silence was suffocating, punctuated only by the occasional clink of silverware against porcelain. My heart ached with loneliness, but my voice trembled too much to speak up, until one night it all boiled over. "Do you even care about me anymore?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. He barely looked up from his screen, dismissing me with a curt nod. That's when something inside me snapped. "You're not the person I fell in love with!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. That man, the one who used to hold my hand, laugh with me, dream with me, he's gone. Who are you now? Just some stranger living under the same roof? The room went deathly quiet. His expression hardened, his jaw tightening as though he were biting back words he might regret later. For a moment, I thought he'd yell back, defend himself, or maybe even apologize. But instead, he stood up silently, grabbed his laptop, and walked out of the room without so much as a glance in my direction. It wasn't just anger that filled the air. It was despair, betrayal, and an unspoken acknowledgement that things could never go back to how they once were. Days turned into weeks, and still no words passed between us. Each day felt heavier than the last, the weight of unresolved pain pressing down on me. I tried reaching out a few times, hoping for reconciliation, but every attempt ended in failure. Once, I left a handwritten note on his pillow. "Please talk to me. I miss you." When I returned home later that evening, the note lay crumpled in the trash can, untouched and unread. Our house had become a battleground where emotions simmered beneath the surface, waiting to explode. Every shared space felt colder, emptier, until I began questioning whether staying together was worth the agony. And yet, despite everything, there was a part of me clinging desperately to hope. A fragile thread holding me back from walking away forever. The tension in our crumbling marriage reached a boiling point when suspicion turned into accusation. It started with something as seemingly trivial as lipstick, a shade too bold, too provocative for his liking. "What's this, huh?" he sneered, pointing at my mouth. "You painted your lips like a street girl." His voice dripped with disdain, each word slicing through me like a knife. I froze, caught off guard by the venom in his tone. "Do you think anyone will believe you're innocent when you dress and paint yourself like that?" he continued, his eyes narrowing. "Who exactly are you trying to impress? Or should I say, who are you trying to seduce?" The insinuation hung heavy in the air, an unspoken accusation that felt like a noose tightening around my neck. My heart pounded as I struggled to defend myself, but the look on his face told me it was futile. He had already made up his mind. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Later that evening, his phone buzzed incessantly on the dining table. He glanced at the screen, and within seconds, his expression darkened. Without saying a word, he shoved the phone toward me. On the screen was a photograph. Me standing close to a man I vaguely recognized from work, both of us smiling. Beneath the image was a caption. "Is this the business partner she always talks about?" My blood ran cold. "Where did this come from?" I stammered, my hands trembling as I stared at the photo. But he didn't answer. Instead, he laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "So this is how far you've gone," he spat, All those late nights at the office, all those excuses. You were busy playing house with someone else, weren't you? I swear it's not what it looks like. I cried, tears streaming down my face. That man, he's just a colleague. We were discussing a project, nothing more. But my pleas fell on deaf ears. In his eyes, I saw betrayal, not just of trust, but of everything we had built together. His silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of him pacing back and forth across the room. You know what hurts the most? He finally said, his voice low and dangerous. It's not even the cheating. It's the lies. You couldn't even be honest enough to tell me you'd moved on. Every word felt like a dagger piercing deeper into my soul. I wanted to scream, to explain, to make him understand, but the damage was done. That single photograph had shattered whatever fragile trust remained between us. As I sat there, clutching the edge of the table for support, I realized that our relationship wasn't just fractured. It was beyond repair. And yet, despite everything, a part of me still clung to hope, a desperate belief that somehow, someday, we could find our way back to each other. The suggestion came out of nowhere, almost like a desperate attempt to salvage what little remained of our fractured relationship. Shall we go to a restaurant tonight? I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed the hope flickering within me. For a moment, there was silence, a pause that felt heavier than any rejection could have been. Then he sighed, running his fingers through his hair in frustration. I don't have time for this, he muttered coldly. I need to prepare for tomorrow's business trip. My heart sank as I stared at him, incredulous. You always use work as an excuse to avoid me, I snapped, unable to contain my anger. How am I supposed to believe this trip is even real? You never prioritize us anymore. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond, just turned away and began packing papers into his briefcase with deliberate indifference. The message was clear. I wasn't worth his time. Later that evening, after he had left, the house felt suffocatingly empty. I wandered aimlessly from room to room until I found myself sitting on the edge of our bed, staring into the darkness. Tears streamed silently down my face as the weight of everything crashed over me. Was this marriage still meaningful? Or had it become nothing more than two strangers sharing the same roof, bound together by habit rather than love? I thought about all the promises we'd made, the dreams we once shared, and how far we'd drifted apart. Each missed dinner, each canceled plan, every unanswered call or text. They weren't just isolated incidents, they were pieces of a puzzle that now painted a picture of neglect and abandonment. And yet, despite the pain, a small part of me clung to the hope that things could change, that maybe one day he would look at me the way he used to. But tonight, sitting alone in the dark, that hope felt painfully fragile. My mind kept replaying his dismissive tone, the way he brushed off my invitation without a second thought. It wasn't just about the restaurant. It was about feeling invisible, unimportant, unworthy of his attention. As the hours ticked by, I realized something terrifying. If things continued like this, I might lose myself completely. By the time morning arrived, exhaustion had replaced despair. But the questions lingered. What did I truly want? Did I stay and fight for scraps of affection or walk away before it consumed me entirely? The uncertainty gnawed at me, leaving behind a hollow ache that no amount of reasoning could soothe. When he finally returned home later that day, distant and preoccupied as ever, I knew the answer wouldn't come easily. Or soon. The room was dimly lit, the faint glow of the bedside lamp casting shadows on the walls. My husband lay there, his face emotionless even in sleep. The steady rhythm of his breathing filled the silence, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. He had no idea, no clue, that I was teetering on the edge of something dangerous, something that could destroy everything we had built together. As I watched him, guilt gnawed at my insides, but it was quickly overshadowed by frustration. How could he remain so oblivious? Did he not see how unhappy I'd become? And then there was him, the man who had been lingering in my thoughts for weeks now, whispering words that both terrified and thrilled me. "He doesn't deserve you," he had said earlier that evening, his voice low and intoxicating. "You deserve to be loved, truly cherished, not treated like an afterthought." His words lingered in my mind long after he left, wrapping around my heart like a poisonous vine. I glanced back at my sleeping husband, resentment bubbling beneath the surface. Was he really as innocent as he seemed? Or was his indifference just another form of cruelty? Every ignored text message, every missed dinner, every cold shoulder, it all added up to this moment where I felt more alone than ever. And yet, despite knowing deep down that what I was doing was wrong, part of me couldn't help but agree with the stranger's assessment. Maybe I did deserve better. Maybe I deserved someone who would look at me the way my husband used to, before life, work, and time stole the spark between us. But as these thoughts consumed me, reality came crashing back. What was I thinking? This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of woman who entertained such ideas, let alone acted on them. Yet here I was, sitting in the dark, torn between loyalty to the man lying beside me and the intoxicating allure of someone new. The weight of my internal conflict was suffocating, each breath heavier than the last. "You smell like roses," the stranger had murmured during one of our fleeting encounters. "I can't resist your beauty." Those words replayed in my head now, taunting me, tempting me to cross a line I knew I shouldn't. But with every heartbeat, doubt crept in. Was I overthinking things? Could my marriage still be saved? Or was I simply too afraid to admit that it was already beyond repair? As dawn approached, I realized I was trapped, not by circumstances, but by my own indecision. No matter which path I chose, pain awaited me. All I could do was sit there, staring into the darkness, hoping against hope that clarity would come before it was too late. The dream was vivid, almost suffocating in its intensity. I stood at a crossroads, the kind that felt symbolic rather than literal. On one side was my husband, his face streaked with tears as he pleaded for me to come back, his voice cracked with desperation, each word heavy with regret and longing. "Please don't leave me," he begged, his hands reaching out but never quite touching mine. And then there was the other path. The man who had been haunting my thoughts, standing tall and confident, his hand extended toward me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone promised excitement, passion, escape from everything I had grown so weary of. I wanted to move, to choose, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The air around me grew heavier with every passing second, pressing down on my chest until it became hard to breathe. What did I want? Which version of myself would I betray by stepping forward? It wasn't just a decision between two people. It was a choice between safety and adventure, between loyalty and freedom, between the past I had built and the future I craved. And then I woke up, gasping for air, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. My fingers were clenched tightly around the pillow beneath my head, knuckles white from the force of my grip. For a moment, I couldn't tell where reality ended and the remnants of the dream began. Was this what my life had become? A constant tug of war between duty and desire? Am I destroying everything I've ever worked for? I whispered into the darkness, the question hanging unanswered in the stillness of the room. The thought terrified me. Everything I had once valued, stability, commitment, love, now seemed fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse because of choices I hadn't even fully made yet. Yet, despite the fear, a part of me couldn't help but wonder if destruction wasn't exactly what I needed. Could tearing down the walls of my old life make room for something new? Something better? But the guilt lingered, clinging to me like a shadow. How could I justify walking away from someone who had stood by me through so much, only to chase after someone whose intentions I barely understood? Was I blinded by fleeting infatuation, or was this truly about finding happiness? As dawn crept through the curtains, I realized the chaos inside me wasn't going anywhere soon. Every heartbeat reminded me of the stakes, of how high the cost of my decisions might be. Whether I stayed or left, someone would get hurt. And maybe that someone was already me. The night before his departure, I couldn't hold back the storm of emotions brewing inside me. My voice trembled as I approached him, tears streaming down my face. I can't stand this loneliness anymore, I confessed, my words barely audible through choked sobs. I need you by my side. Please let me come with you on your business trip. It was a desperate plea, one born out of fear and vulnerability. For weeks, I had felt like a shadow in our home, invisible and disconnected from everything that once anchored me to him. The thought of staying behind, alone, trapped in silence, was unbearable. Yaxiel. But instead of sympathy, his response was cold and unyielding. His eyes avoided mine as he replied, "This trip is crucial for my career. If you come along, we'll only distract each other and create more problems than solutions." Each word hit me like a hammer, driving deeper the wedge between us. Didn't he understand? This wasn't about convenience or selfishness, it was about survival. Without him, I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in an ocean of isolation. Do you even care about how I feel? I shot back, anger mingling with despair, or am I just another burden to you now? He didn't answer, but the look on his face said it all. My presence would complicate things, not help them. In that moment, I realized just how far apart we had drifted. Once upon a time, he would have held me close, whispered reassurances, promised to find a way to make it work. But now? Now I was nothing more than an inconvenience, a distraction standing in the way of his ambitions. As I watched him pack his suitcase, methodically folding shirts and arranging documents, I felt a pang of resentment mixed with shame. Was I being unreasonable? Or was he simply too focused on himself to see the pain etched across my face? Either way, the rejection stung worse than any argument ever could. "I'll be fine," I muttered bitterly, retreating to the corner of the room. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't be. Every rejection chipped away at what little remained of my self-worth, leaving behind a hollow shell of who I used to be. And yet, despite the ache in my chest, a part of me still clung to hope. That maybe someday, he'd realize how much I needed him. Until then, all I could do was sit there, staring at the floor, wondering if I'd already lost him forever. The moment I arrived at the designated meeting point near the airport, my heart sank like a stone. There he was, stepping out of a sleek black car, laughing and chatting animatedly with someone who wasn't me. A woman. Her presence hit me like a freight train. Her perfectly styled hair and confident smile only amplifying the pain coursing through my veins. They looked so comfortable together, so natural, as if they had known each other for years. And worst of all, neither of them seemed to notice or care that I was standing there frozen in disbelief. My hands clenched into fists as rage bubbled up inside me, hot and uncontrollable. How dare he? After everything we'd been through, after every promise we'd made, this was how it ended? With him parading his betrayal right in front of my eyes? You're nothing but a hypocrite, I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of raw emotion. Heads turned, strangers pausing mid-step to stare, but I didn't care. All I could see was him, the man I once loved, now reduced to a stranger who couldn't even muster an ounce of guilt. I trusted you. I gave you everything, and this is what you do behind my back? He froze, his laughter dying on his lips as reality crashed over him. For a split second, I saw panic flicker across his face before he quickly masked it with indifference. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered, glancing nervously between me and the woman beside him. But his words rang hollow, meaningless against the damning evidence before my eyes. Oh, really? I spat, taking a step closer, my voice dripping with venom. Then why don't you explain exactly what this is? Because from where I'm standing, it sure looks like you've been lying to me. The woman shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact, while he opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, searching for an excuse that wouldn't come. And then, as if fate itself wanted to twist the knife deeper, another voice cut through the tension. Thank you for opening my eyes, I said bitterly, glaring at him. It was true. Someone had shown me text messages, photos, proof of his deceit, proof that shattered any lingering hope I might have clung to. You think you can play both sides and get away with it? Well, guess what? The game's over. His silence spoke volumes. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to defend himself. Instead, he just stood there, defeated, as the truth hung heavy in the air. In that moment, I realized something devastating. The man I thought I knew never truly existed. The air was thick with anger, each word slicing through the tension like a blade. I'm done, I spat, my voice trembling with fury. This marriage is over. You've betrayed me, lied to me, and now you'll pay for it. My hands clenched into fists as I glared at him, tears streaming down my face, but not from sadness. This time they were fueled by rage. I won't let you keep a single thing that belongs to me. We're splitting everything down the middle, everything including the wedding ring. His expression flickered between shock and defiance, but before he could respond, Chris appeared awkwardly in the doorway, his presence only adding fuel to the fire. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to avoid eye contact with either of us. Sorry to interrupt, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck nervously. But even his attempt at neutrality couldn't shield him from being dragged into the chaos. You! I pointed an accusing finger at Chris, my voice rising another octave. Don't think I don't see what's going on here. You've been lurking in the shadows this whole time, haven't you? Playing nice while helping him destroy what little trust we had left. Chris opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Instead, he just stood there, looking more uncomfortable than ever, caught in the crossfire of our crumbling world. Stop acting like a victim, my soon-to-be ex shot back, his tone icy. You made your choice when you decided to play games too. Don't act innocent now. The accusation stung, not because it was true, but because it highlighted how far we'd fallen. From partners to enemies, from lovers to strangers clawing at each other's throats. And don't forget, I added venomously, ignoring his jab, Chris is coming with me after the divorce. That should tell you everything you need to know about who really means something in this mess. At that, Chris visibly flinched, his eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. It was almost cruel, watching him squirm under the weight of responsibility neither of us intended to shoulder. Yet, despite his discomfort, or maybe because of it, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. If I was going down, I wasn't going alone. As the argument raged on, the reality of our situation settled heavily around us. The life we once shared was irreparably broken. Every insult, every demand, every bitter remark carved deeper wounds into what remained of our relationship. And though part of me still ached for the love we'd lost, another part reveled in the destruction. Because if I couldn't have happiness, neither could he. The tension reached its breaking point as we stood by the car, the cold morning air doing little to cool the fiery resentment simmering between us. "This car is mine," he said icily, his voice devoid of any trace of compassion. "Get out now or I'll call the police." His words struck like a whip, leaving no room for negotiation. For a moment, I just stared at him, incredulous, my mind racing with disbelief and anger. How could it come to this? The car, once a symbol of our shared life, of weekend drives and fleeting moments of laughter, was now another casualty in the wreckage of our marriage. I stepped out reluctantly, my hands trembling as I grabbed my belongings from the back seat. The finality of the moment hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about the car. It was about everything slipping irrevocably through my fingers. As I stood there, watching him slide into the driver's seat, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. Not just for the vehicle, but for the life we had built together. Now reduced to ashes. "Fine," I muttered under my breath, refusing to let him see how much his cruelty was tearing me apart. But inside, I was crumbling. Without another word, he sped off, leaving me stranded on the curb. It was humiliating, infuriating, and yet, somehow, unsurprising. Later that day, we found ourselves seated across from each other at a restaurant, the weight of unspoken grievances hanging heavily in the air. The decision to meet here had been made hastily, almost as if both of us believed that one last conversation could salvage what remained of our fractured relationship. But instead of clarity, there was only silence, an oppressive, suffocating quiet that seemed to press down on us from all sides. Neither of us dared to speak first, afraid of what might spill out if we did. The atmosphere grew increasingly unbearable, every passing second stretching into eternity. Other patrons stole furtive glances in our direction, their curiosity palpable. I could feel their eyes boring into us, judging, speculating. Were they wondering why a couple dressed so formally sat in stony silence? Did they see the cracks beneath the surface? The years of betrayal, mistrust, and heartbreak? Finally, I broke the silence. "Where do we even begin?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, small and fragile against the backdrop of hostility surrounding us. He didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to stare blankly at the menu in front of him. When he finally spoke, his tone was clipped, distant. "Maybe some things can't be fixed." His words hung in the air like a death sentence, sealing the fate of whatever hope still lingered between us. And as we sat there, trapped in a vortex of regret and unresolved pain, I realized something painful. This wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the end of us. "Don't call me ma'am anymore," I snapped, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "That title makes me sick. It's fake, just like everything else between us." The driver hesitated, his knuckles white against the steering wheel, clearly unprepared for such venom. It wasn't just a demand, it was a declaration. A final act of severing whatever fragile thread of civility still lingered. My hands clenched into fists as I glared at him through the rearview mirror. You don't respect me, I continued bitterly. Stop pretending you do. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.